I watched my son's wife slap me across the face in front of 300 people, and all I could think was how much the catering must have cost. The sting spread across my cheek like wildfire. My vision blurred for half a second. Clara stood there with her hand still raised, her face twisted into something ugly beneath all that expensive makeup. The band had stopped playing. Someone dropped a champagne flute. The sound of crystal shattering echoed through the reception hall like a gunshot. "How dare you embarrass me?" Clara hissed. Her voice cut through the silence. "You're nothing but a glorified maid in this family. Now give me those keys." She meant the keys to my apartment downtown, the one I'd bought with my own money, my own sweat, after 20 years of breaking my back in construction, and another 10, building my business from nothing. The apartment Victor had grown up visiting every summer, where I'd taught him to play chess and showed him what hard work actually meant. I touched my cheek. It was hot. My hand came away clean, but I could feel every eye in that ballroom burning into me. Victor stood 5 feet away, frozen like a deer in headlights. My son, 32 years old, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my first car, and he couldn't even look at me. "Say something," I said to him. My voice came out steady, calm. I'd learned a long time ago that the quieter you speak, the more people listen. Victor's mouth opened, closed. His Adam's apple bobbed. "Dad, maybe you should just what?" I kept my eyes on him. "Just let your wife assault me? Just hand over my property because she asked nicely?" Clara stepped forward. She was wearing white, of course. A dress that probably cost $15,000, paid for with money from the business accounts Victor had access to. My business accounts. That apartment should belong to Victor, to us. You're being selfish, keeping it when we need. Need? I laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. You need a fourth property? You need another asset to borrow against for your shopping habits? Her face went red. The crowd was starting to murmur now. I could see her parents near the head table, both of them looking like they'd swallowed something sour. Good. Let them see what their daughter really was. "You're making a scene," Clara said. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried. "Do you want to ruin your son's wedding day?" I looked around the room, at the ice sculptures melting slowly on the buffet tables, at the flower arrangements that cost more than some people's monthly rent, at my ex-wife Margaret sitting in the corner, her face pale, wringing her hands like she always did when conflict arose. She'd chosen peace over principle so many times in our marriage that I'd lost count. That's why she was my ex-wife now. Then I looked back at my son, really looked at him. When had he become this person? When had he started caring more about appearances than integrity? I could pinpoint it, actually. 3 years ago, when he'd met Clara at some charity gala. She'd sunk her claws in deep and fast, and by the time I'd seen what she was doing, it was too late. "No," I said. "I don't want to ruin anything. I'm just leaving." I turned toward the exit. My shoes clicked on the marble floor. Each step felt like walking through water. "That's right, run away," Clara called after me. "Just like you always do when things get hard." I stopped. My hand was on the brass door handle, cool against my palm. For a moment I considered turning back, considered really letting her have it, right there in front of everyone. But that's not how you win wars. That's how you lose them. Instead, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, found the name I was looking for, hit dial. It rang twice. "Yeah?" The voice on the other end was rough, like gravel under tires. "It's Tom," I said. "I need that favor you owe me." "What kind of favor?" I looked back over my shoulder. Clara had her arm around Victor now, playing the victim. Margaret was crying quietly. The band had started playing again, trying to salvage the mood. Nobody was looking at me anymore. They'd already written me off, the embarrassing father who couldn't take a hint. The kind that involves digging up everything about someone, and I mean everything. There was a pause. Then, "Give me a name." "Clara Whitmore. Maiden name Chen." The bride? The bride, I confirmed. Another pause, longer this time. You sure about this, Tom? I pushed through the door. The night air hit me like a cold slap, washing away the perfume and cologne and fake smiles. My truck was parked at the far end of the lot. I'd driven myself because Margaret had insisted on arriving early with Victor, and I hadn't wanted to impose. Funny how that worked out. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I said. I hung up, got in my truck. Sat there for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the reception hall through the windshield. The lights inside were golden and warm. From here, it looked like a fairy tale. Beautiful, perfect, untouchable. I started the engine and drove away. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most of them were from Margaret, each one more frantic than the last. A few were from my sister Rachel, who'd been at the wedding and apparently wanted to talk about what happened. 2 were from Victor. I deleted those without reading them. I made coffee. Black, no sugar. Sat at my kitchen table and watched the sunrise through the window. My apartment, the one Clara wanted so badly, was on the 15th floor of a building I'd helped construct back in 2018. I knew every beam, every wire, every pipe in the walls. I'd been there when they'd poured the foundation. This place was mine, in a way that went beyond ownership papers. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Tom Brennan? The voice was smooth, professional. Speaking. My name is James Keller. I'm calling on behalf of your son, Victor. He's asked me to mediate a conversation between the two of you regarding yesterday's incident. I took a sip of coffee. It was still too hot, burned my tongue. Victor hired a mediator. How progressive of him. Mr. Brennan, I understand emotions are running high. Do you? I set my mug down. Do you understand what it's like to build something from nothing, to sacrifice everything for your children, only to have them side with someone who physically assaults you in public? Silence on the other end. Then, I'm simply trying to facilitate a dialogue. Tell Victor if he wants to talk to me, he can pick up the phone himself, like a man. I hung up, blocked the number, finished my coffee. My phone rang again immediately. This time it was the number I'd called last night. I answered. Talk to me, I said. Clara Whitmore, born Clara Chen, 28 years old. The gravel voice, belonging to a man named Eddie Marsh, rattled off facts like he was reading from a script. Eddie and I went back 25 years to when we'd both worked construction in the summer to pay for community college. He'd gone into private investigation after a bad fall had messed up his back. I'd stayed in construction and eventually started my own company. She grew up in Portland, moved to Seattle for college, dropped out after 2 years, worked as a personal assistant for various wealthy families. That's how she networks, apparently. Gets close to rich people, makes herself indispensable, moves up the social ladder. So she's a professional social climber. That's a nice way to put it. But here's where it gets interesting. 3 years ago, she was working for a family named the Rutherfords. Edward Rutherford, tech money. His wife died suddenly, car accident. 6 months later, Clara was dating the son, James Rutherford. I leaned forward. And it fell apart when James's sister did some digging, found out Clara had been skimming money from the household accounts. Small amounts, nothing that would be noticed right away, but it added up to about $40,000 over 8 months. The sister confronted her. Clara denied it, played victim, but the evidence was solid. James broke it off. The family didn't press charges because they didn't want the scandal. So she has a history of this. Gets better. Before the Rutherfords, she worked for a divorce lawyer named Patricia Vance. Left that job under mysterious circumstances. I'm still digging into that one, but my contact at the firm said there were some irregularities with client confidentiality. Nothing proven, but enough smoke to suggest fire. I sat back in my chair. What else? She's got 3 credit cards maxed out to a total of about $75,000. Student loans she hasn't touched in 6 years. A car lease that's 2 months behind. Your son has been covering most of her expenses since they started dating. Of course he has. There's more. I'm tracking down a paper trail that suggests she might be involved in some kind of real estate flipping scheme that went bad. Still working on confirming that. Give me another day or two. Take your time. Be thorough. You paying my usual rate? Double it. I want everything. You got it. Eddie paused. Tom, what are you planning to do with all this? I looked around my apartment, at the bookshelf full of business and philosophy texts, at the photos on the wall, mostly of Victor when he was younger, before Clara. One showed him at 15, holding up a trophy from a chess tournament I'd coached him through. He was grinning, gap-toothed and genuine. I'm going to burn her entire world down, I said, and I'm going to make sure everyone watches it happen. 3 days later, Eddie sent me a file. It was 217 pages long. I printed it out and spent an entire evening going through it with a highlighter and a legal pad, making notes, connecting dots. By the time I was finished, my coffee had gone cold 4 times, and the sun was coming up again. Clara Whitmore, née Chen, was a masterpiece of deception. The real estate scheme Eddie had mentioned turned out to be even worse than expected. She'd convinced 2 previous boyfriends to invest in properties that didn't exist, pocketing the money and claiming the deals had fallen through. One of the guys had tried to sue her, but she'd settled out of court for pennies on the dollar and a non-disclosure agreement. The pattern was clear. She'd find men with money or prospects, attach herself like a barnacle, drain what she could, and move on before anyone caught wise. The only difference with Victor was that she'd actually married him. That suggested either genuine feeling, which I doubted, or a longer con. I was betting on the longer con. The apartment keys she'd demanded weren't really about the apartment. They were about control, about establishing dominance. She needed Victor and me to understand that she was in charge now, that what was his was hers, and what was mine would eventually become hers too. The public humiliation was part of it. Break me down in front of witnesses, make me look weak, make Victor choose her over me. Then slowly, methodically, take everything. It might have worked too, if she'd been smarter about it, if she'd waited longer, played nice, been patient. But Clara wasn't patient. That was her fatal flaw. She wanted everything now, and she wanted everyone to know she'd won. My phone buzzed. Text message from Margaret. We need to talk about Victor, please. I'd been avoiding my ex-wife, not out of anger, exactly. More out of a deep, weary exhaustion with her inability to take a stand. But she was right. We did need to talk, just not about what she thought. I texted back, coffee tomorrow, that place on 7th Street, 10 a.m. She responded immediately, thank you. I set the phone down and went back to the file. There was a section about Clara's parents. Father had been military, deceased 5 years ago. Mother worked as a nurse, retired now, living in a small town in Oregon. They weren't wealthy. That was interesting. Clara had told Victor her family was comfortable, had money in investments. Another lie. I made a note on my legal pad. Check financial documents, marriage, accounts, property transfers. If Clara was going to come after my assets, she'd need legal justification. The apartment was solely in my name, but Victor had access to several business accounts and owned a stake in the company. If she convinced him to sue me for some reason, or if she somehow got power of attorney, she could cause real damage. I needed to get ahead of that, needed to protect what I'd built. But more than that, I needed to wake Victor up, show him what he'd married, not in a way that would make him defensive, not in a way that would push him further into her arms. That required precision, timing, strategy. The slap at the wedding had been impulsive, emotional, a mistake on Clara's part. It showed her hand. It revealed that underneath all the charm and manipulation, she was just as volatile and desperate as anyone else. I could use that. I would use that. But first, I needed to talk to Margaret. Margaret looked older. That was my first thought when I saw her at the coffee shop. She'd always been careful about her appearance, but today there were dark circles under her eyes, and her hair wasn't quite right. She'd aged 10 years in the past week. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, as I sat down across from her. She already had a latte, barely touched. I ordered black coffee from the waitress. "You sounded urgent." "Victor came to see me yesterday." Margaret twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit she'd never broken even though we'd been divorced for 5 years. "He's very upset. He thinks you're trying to sabotage his marriage. Clara slapped me in public and demanded my property. What exactly am I supposed to do? Send her a thank you card?" I know. Margaret's voice dropped. "What she did was wrong. But Tom, she's his wife now. He loves her. He's asked me to talk to you, to try to smooth things over." I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter. "Did he ask you, or did Clara ask you?" Margaret's face crumpled slightly. "Does it matter?" "It matters a lot." I leaned forward. "Do you know why our marriage ended, Margaret?" "We grew apart. We wanted different things. We ended because you couldn't stand up to anyone. Not to your mother when she insulted me at every family dinner. Not to Victor when he started making bad choices in high school. Not even to the contractors who tried to cheat us when we renovated the house. You'd rather keep the peace than fight for what's right." Her eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair." "Maybe not. But it's true." I softened my voice slightly. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Margaret. I'm trying to make you see something. Victor is in trouble. Real trouble. Clara isn't who she pretends to be." "What do you mean?" I'd brought a folder with me. Not the entire file, just enough to make my point. I slid it across the table. "Read this. Then we'll talk." Margaret opened the folder. I watched her face as she read, watched the confusion turn to concern, turn to horror. She got through about 10 pages before she closed it and pushed it back toward me. "Where did you get this?" "A private investigator. Everything in there is verifiable. Bank records, court documents, interviews with people who knew her." "Does Victor know?" "What do you think?" Margaret put her face in her hands. "Oh God. He has no idea, does he?" "Clara is very good at what she does. She knows how to present exactly what people want to see. Victor wanted someone sophisticated, someone who could fit into the circles he was trying to break into after the business took off. She became that person, but it's a mask. Underneath, she's a con artist. We have to tell him." I shook my head. "If we tell him directly, he won't believe us. He'll think we're making it up because we don't like her. Clara will spin it, play the victim, and Victor will choose her side. We've already seen how that works." "Then what do we do?" I pulled the folder back. "We let her destroy herself. We just give her the rope." Margaret stared at me. "I don't understand." "Clara wants my apartment. She wants access to the business. She wants to be the queen of Victor's life, and she wants everyone to acknowledge it. So we let her think she's winning. We step back, and we watch her get greedy. Greedy people make mistakes. That sounds cruel. It's necessary." I stood up, left money on the table for both our coffees. "Victor is my son. I'm not going to watch him get destroyed without doing something about it. But I'm also not going to beg him to see the truth. He needs to discover it himself. And if he doesn't?" I looked down at my ex-wife. She was crying now, quietly, trying not to make a scene. Always trying not to make a scene. "Then at least I'll know I tried. Are you going to help me, or are you going to keep playing Switzerland?" Margaret wiped her eyes. "What do you need me to do?" The plan was simple on the surface, complicated in execution. I needed Clara to feel secure, to think she'd won, to believe that I'd accepted my place in the new family hierarchy. Once she felt safe, she'd get sloppy, she'd push harder, she'd make demands, and eventually, she'd do something that even Victor couldn't ignore. Margaret agreed to be my inside source. She'd stay close to Victor and Clara, play the concerned mother, report back to me about what they were planning. It wasn't spycraft exactly, but it was close enough. The irony of my peace-loving ex-wife becoming a double agent wasn't lost on me. "She's pushing Victor to ask for a stake in the apartment," Margaret told me over the phone a week later. "She says it's only fair, since he's your son and you're getting older. She's framing it as planning for the future." Of course she is. I was in my truck, heading to a job site. One of my crews was behind schedule and I needed to crack some heads. What did Victor say? He's conflicted. He knows it's not right to ask, but Clara keeps bringing it up. She's wearing him down. Let her. Tell Victor I'm thinking about it. Tell him I'm considering creating a trust or something, but I need time to talk to my lawyers. Are you actually going to do that? No, but Clara doesn't need to know that. Keep me posted. I hung up and pulled into the construction site. The foreman, a guy named Rick who'd been with me for 8 years, met me at the gate. "We got a problem," he said without preamble. "Tell me." "City inspector came by this morning, says we're not up to code on the electrical work in the East Wing, wants us to tear it out and redo it." I felt my jaw tighten. "Did you get a written notice?" "Right here." Rick handed me a clipboard. The notice was official, stamped and signed, but something about it felt wrong. "Who's the inspector?" "Guy named Dalton. Never seen him before." I pulled out my phone, called my contact at City Planning. "Yeah, it's Tom Brennan. I need you to run a name for me. Inspector named Dalton, first name unknown, just issued a code violation on the Riverside project." I waited while she checked her database. "No Dalton in our system, Tom. You sure you got the name right?" "Pretty sure. Can you send me a list of current inspectors?" "Give me 5 minutes." I hung up and looked at Rick. "Don't touch anything until I sort this out. If this inspector comes back, call me immediately." "You think something's off?" "I think someone's trying to mess with us." The list of inspectors came through. No Dalton. I took a photo of the violation notice and sent it to Eddie. "Check if this is legit, and find out who this Dalton is." Eddie called back within an hour. "It's a fake. The signature doesn't match any official inspector on file. The stamp is real, though. Someone either stole it or had access to one. Who would do that?" "Good question. You got any enemies in the city planning department?" I thought about it. Not that I know of, but I'll find out. "Want me to dig deeper?" "Yeah. And Eddie, check if this connects to Clara somehow. Seems like a weird coincidence, all this happening right after the wedding." "You think she's going after your business now?" "I think she's going after everything. The question is, how far she'll go." Turns out, pretty far. Over the next 2 weeks, I got 3 more fake violations on various job sites. Each one was designed to cost me time and money. Each one required me to fight with city officials to prove they were fraudulent. My crews were getting nervous. My clients were getting annoyed. My reputation was taking hits. Eddie finally cracked it. The violations were being filed through a contact Clara had from her days working for the divorce lawyer, a paralegal named Diane Morrison, who had connections in city planning and access to official stamps. Clara had stayed in touch with Diane, probably keeping her as a backup resource for exactly this kind of situation. "She's smart," Eddie said, "using someone outside her immediate circle to do the dirty work. There's no direct connection between her and the violations. If you tried to prove it, she'd just deny everything." "Can we connect Diane to Clara?" "Phone records show they've been in contact, but that's not illegal, just suspicious." I sat in my apartment, staring at the city skyline. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and gold, beautiful and completely meaningless. "What about Diane? Is she clean?" "Depends on your definition of clean. She's got a sealed juvenile record, some kind of fraud charge when she was 17. Nothing since then. Works as a paralegal, makes decent money, lives alone, no obvious vices." Everyone has vices. True. Give me another week, I'll find hers. While Eddie worked on Diane, I focused on Victor. Margaret reported that the pressure for the apartment had intensified. Clara was now suggesting that Victor should sue me for his rightful inheritance. She'd apparently been talking to a lawyer, not the one she'd worked for, someone new, someone who specialized in family law. She's building a case, Margaret said. She sounded exhausted. She's got Victor convinced that you're being unreasonable, that you don't trust him, that you're treating him like a child. What's your read on Victor? A long pause. He's confused, angry. He loves you, Tom, but he loves her too. She's in his head. I don't know if we can reach him anymore. We will. Just keep playing along. Keep being supportive. She needs to think she's got you on her side. This is so hard. I know. But it was about to get harder. 3 days later, I got a certified letter from a law firm I'd never heard of. Inside was a formal demand that I transfer 50% ownership of the apartment to Victor, citing his position as my only child and heir. The letter claimed that I'd made verbal promises about his inheritance, and that refusing to honor those promises constituted elder abuse and financial manipulation. Elder abuse. I was 51 years old, hardly elderly. I called my own lawyer, a guy named Phil Bernstein who'd been handling my business affairs for a decade. Tell me this is a joke, I said. It's not a joke. It's garbage, but it's not a joke. Phil sounded annoyed. They're trying to bully you. The claims have no merit. You never made any promises, verbal or otherwise, and even if you had, that's not how inheritance works. You're alive and competent. You can do whatever you want with your property. So what do I do? Ignore it for now. They're hoping you'll panic and settle. If they actually file a lawsuit, we'll destroy them in court. But my guess is they won't go that far. This is a scare tactic. Should I respond at all? Let me handle it. I'll send them a letter explaining that their claims are baseless, and any further harassment will result in a countersuit for legal fees. That usually shuts these things down. I hung up feeling slightly better, but only slightly. Clara was escalating. The fake violations, the legal threats. It was all part of a coordinated campaign to break me down. She wanted me stressed, distracted, weakened. But she'd made a mistake. She'd assumed I'd roll over, that I'd be too tired, too old, too beaten down to fight back. She didn't understand that everything I'd built by fighting. Construction sites taught you to be tough, running a business taught you to be ruthless, and being a father taught you to protect what mattered, no matter the cost. Clara had picked a war with the wrong person. Eddie found Diane's weakness 2 weeks later. Turned out she had a gambling problem. Nothing major, not yet. But she was spending every weekend at a casino 2 hours north, burning through about $500 a week. She was winning sometimes, losing more often. The kind of spiral that starts small and gets bigger. She's vulnerable, Eddie said. Needs money, has access to resources, willing to bend rules. Classic target for someone like Clara. How much do you think Clara's paying her? Hard to say. Probably not much. Maybe a few thousand total. Diane might be doing it just for the thrill. Some people get off on that kind of thing. I thought about it. Can you approach her? Depends. What do you want me to say? Feel her out. See if she'd be willing to flip. Tell her we know what she's doing, that we have proof, but we're willing to forget about it if she cooperates. That's risky. She might warn Clara. She might. But if she's smart, she'll realize Clara will throw her under the bus the second things go south. Con artists don't have loyal friends. They have useful people. Eddie made contact with Diane at the casino. Sat down next to her at a blackjack table, struck up a conversation, let her win a few hands, bought her drinks. By the end of the night, she was comfortable enough with him that when he mentioned he knew about the fake violations, she didn't bolt. She just went quiet. I'm not here to hurt you, Eddie had told her. I'm here to give you a way out. Clara's using you. You know that, right? When this blows up, and it will blow up, She's going to point all the blame at you. You'll lose your job, your license, maybe face criminal charges. Is that worth whatever she's paying you? Diane had sat there for a long time, staring at her cards. Then she'd said, "What do you want?" "Information. Documents. Proof that Clara orchestrated this. You give us that. We make sure you're protected. You might lose your job, but you won't go to jail. You won't have a record. You get a clean start. And if I say no? Then we go to the authorities with what we already have. You take the fall alone. Clara walks away. Your choice." Diane had taken 2 days to decide. Then she'd called Eddie and said she was in. She'd been keeping copies of everything, including text messages and emails from Clara laying out the scheme. Smart girl. Smarter than Clara gave her credit for, apparently. Eddie brought me the files. I read through them in my apartment, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Clara had been sloppy. In the text messages, she'd been explicit about wanting to make the old man suffer. She'd joked about watching me squirm. She'd even mentioned how this was phase 1 of getting access to the business. Phase 1. That meant there was a phase 2, and probably a phase 3. Clara had a long game in mind. She wasn't just going after the apartment or making my life difficult. She wanted everything. The business, the properties, the accounts. She wanted to push me out completely and install herself and Victor as the new power structure. It was ambitious. I'd give her that. But ambition without wisdom is just arrogance. I called Margaret. "I need you to set up a family dinner. You, me, Victor, and Clara. Tell Victor I'm ready to talk about the apartment. Tell him I'm willing to compromise." "Are you sure?" "Trust me." "When?" "This weekend. Saturday night. Make a reservation somewhere nice. Public, but not too crowded. I want witnesses, but I want privacy for the conversation." Margaret made the reservation at an upscale Italian place downtown. Private room in the back, table for 4. I spent the week preparing, going over the documents, planning exactly what I'd say and when. This had to be perfect. One shot. If I messed it up, I'd lose Victor forever. Saturday came. I wore a suit, the good one I saved for client meetings. Arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early. The private room was elegant, soft lighting, white tablecloths, expensive wine glasses. The kind of place where people made deals and ended relationships. Margaret arrived next. She looked nervous. "He doesn't suspect anything," she whispered as we waited. "Good." Victor and Clara showed up 10 minutes late. Victor looked uncomfortable in his jacket and tie. Clara looked radiant. She'd dressed for victory, a black dress that probably cost a month of Diane's salary. She smiled at me as they sat down. "Tom," she said warmly, "thank you for agreeing to meet. I know things have been tense." I smiled back. "I think it's time we cleared the air." We ordered appetizers and wine, made small talk about the weather, about Victor's work, about nothing that mattered. Clara was playing the perfect daughter-in-law, attentive and charming. Victor was quiet, watching me like he wasn't sure what I'd do. When the entrees arrived, I set down my fork and looked at Victor. "Your wife asked for my apartment keys at your wedding. Then she slapped me when I refused. I think we need to address that." Victor shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, Clara was emotional that day. She's apologized." "No, I haven't," Clara interrupted. She met my eyes directly. "I'm not sorry. You were being stubborn and selfish. Victor is your son. He deserves to share in what you've built. That apartment should be part of his inheritance." "You know what I mean." I nodded slowly. "I do know what you mean. You mean you think you can bully me into giving up my property. You think because you married Victor, you're entitled to everything I own. And you think if you push hard enough, I'll break." Clara's smile tightened. "I think families should support each other." "Family." I pulled a folder from my briefcase, set it on the table. "Let's talk about family. Victor, do you know why Clara needed money so badly that she was willing to assault me in public?" "Dad, don't..." Victor started. Because she's drowning in debt. Credit cards, student loans, car payments. About $80,000 total. I know because I had someone look into it. Clara's face went pale. You investigated me? You tried to sabotage my business with fake city violations. I'd say we're even. I opened the folder, slid documents across the table. Here's proof that you hired a paralegal named Diane Morrison to file false reports. Here are text messages where you discuss how to make the old man suffer. Here are bank records showing your debt. And here, this is my favorite. Here's an interview with James Rutherford, your ex-boyfriend, explaining how you stole $40,000 from his family. Victor was reading the documents, his face draining of color. Margaret sat frozen, her hands clasped in her lap. Clara stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is entrapment. You can't use any of this. I can use all of it, I said calmly. Because it's true. Because you're a con artist who saw my son as an easy mark. You thought you could manipulate him, isolate him from his family, and take everything we've built. But you made 2 mistakes. What mistakes? Her voice was shaking now. First, you underestimated how much I'm willing to fight for my son. And second, you got greedy. If you'd been patient, if you'd actually tried to be a real partner to Victor, you might have gotten away with it. But you couldn't help yourself. You had to push. You had to win. And that's what destroyed you. Victor was staring at Clara now. Is this true? Did you steal from the Rutherfords? Clara's eyes filled with tears. Baby, let me explain. Did you file fake violations against my father's business? It's not what it looks like. Answer the question. Victor slammed his hand on the table. The wine glasses jumped. Did you do this? Clara opened her mouth, closed it. The tears were streaming now, but they looked different than before, less like sadness, more like rage. Yes, she finally said. Yes, I did. Because your father doesn't respect you. He doesn't respect us. He was never going to give you what you deserve. I was trying to help. Help? Victor laughed. It was a terrible sound. You were trying to steal from him. From us. From everyone. I love you, Clara said desperately. Everything I did was for us. For our future. No. Victor stood up. Everything you did was for you. I'm such an idiot. I chose you over my own father. I let you convince me he was the problem. He looked at me. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to feel triumphant, vindicated, but all I felt was tired. I know, son. What happens now? Margaret asked quietly. I gathered the documents back into the folder. Now Clara has 2 choices. She can leave quietly, sign a postnuptial agreement surrendering any claim to Victor's assets or my property, and we don't press charges for the fake violations. Or she can fight, and I turn everything over to the district attorney. Fraud, filing false reports, harassment, the charges will stick. Clara was still standing, her hands gripping the back of her chair so hard her knuckles were white. You can't prove intent. I can prove everything. I pulled out another document. Diane Morrison gave me sworn testimony. In exchange for immunity, she provided every text message, every email, every piece of evidence showing you orchestrated the entire scheme. She's cooperating fully with authorities if I choose to pursue this. You bastard. Maybe, but I'm a bastard who protects what's his. I looked at Victor. I'm sorry you had to see this. I know you loved her. Victor was staring at his plate. Did I? Or did I just love who I thought she was? Clara's tears had stopped. Her face had gone hard, all the charm stripped away. This was the real Clara, the one who'd been hiding behind the smile and the designer clothes. Fine. I'll sign your postnuptial agreement, but I want something in return. You're not in a position to negotiate, I said. Aren't I? Victor and I are legally married. Even with a postnup, I'm entitled to something. California is a community property state. I could drag this out in court for years, cost you tens of thousands in legal fees, make Victor's life miserable. I'd expected this. Clara was a survivor. She knew when to fold, but she always angled for one last score. What do you want? $50,000. Cash. And I walk away. Victor gets an uncontested divorce. I sign whatever you want. I disappear. Dad, don't give her anything, Victor said. But I was already doing the math. $50,000 to end this cleanly versus years of legal battles and the emotional toll on Victor. It was a good deal. For her. For me. Maybe even for Victor. 40,000, I countered. And you sign a non-disclosure agreement. You don't talk about this family, about Victor, about me, about any of it. Ever. You disappear completely. Clara considered it. I could see her calculating, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. 40,000, NDA, but I want the money within 48 hours. You'll have it. My lawyer will draw up the papers. She looked at Victor. I suppose this is goodbye. Victor didn't look up. Just go. Clara picked up her purse, walked to the door. Then she stopped and turned back. You know what's funny? I actually did love you, Victor. At first. Before I realized how weak you were. How easy it was to control you. Your father was right about one thing. You are a disappointment. She left. The door closed softly behind her. The three of us sat in silence for a long moment. Well, Margaret finally said, that went better than I expected. I almost laughed. Did it? Victor put his head in his hands. I'm such a fool. You're not a fool. You're human. Clara is good at what she does. She's had practice. You tried to warn me. You weren't ready to hear it. And now I'm divorced before my first anniversary. How does that even happen? I reached across the table, put my hand on his shoulder. It happens because you trusted someone who didn't deserve it. But you'll heal. You'll learn. And you'll be smarter next time. Will there be a next time? Will anyone want me after this disaster? Someone will. Someone real. But first, you need to figure out who you are without her whispering in your ear. Margaret was crying again, but this time they were different tears. Relief, maybe. Or just the release of weeks of tension. I'm glad it's over, she said. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The $40,000 was transferred 2 days later through Phil's law office. Clara signed the post-nuptial agreement, the divorce papers, and the NDA without reading them. She just wanted the money. Phil said she'd shown up with her own lawyer, a sleazy guy who'd probably been disbarred twice, and they'd tried to negotiate for more. When Phil threatened to void the entire deal and hand everything to the DA, they'd backed down. Victor moved back into his old apartment, the one he'd bought when he first started working at the company. It was smaller than the house he'd shared with Clara, but he said it felt cleaner somehow, like he could breathe again. We started having dinner once a week, just the two of us. We didn't talk about Clara much. We talked about work, about life, about nothing important. Slowly, the son I remembered started coming back. The one who asked questions instead of making assumptions. The one who laughed at bad jokes. The one who looked me in the eye when we spoke. Margaret kept saying it was a miracle. I didn't believe in miracles. I believed in being smarter than your enemies and more ruthless than your opponents. That's what had saved Victor. Not divine intervention, just preparation and patience. Eddie called one afternoon about 3 weeks after the restaurant confrontation. Thought you'd want to know. Clara left Seattle, moved to Miami. Miami? Warm weather, rich retirees, easy targets. She'll do fine down there until someone catches on. Did you warn anyone? Not my job. I got paid to investigate her, not to babysit the entire state of Florida. Fair enough. You did good, Tom. Your kid's lucky to have you. He'd probably disagree with that assessment. Then he's an idiot. But he's your idiot. I hung up and sat in my apartment, looking out at the city. The sun was setting again. I'd watched it set so many times from this window. When Victor was young, I used to bring him up here and we'd count the buildings as the lights came on. He'd always lose track around 30. I'd always pretend not to know the exact number so he could feel like we were discovering it together. Where had that boy gone? When had he turned into someone who could be manipulated so easily? And whose fault was that? Mine for working too much? Margaret's for being too passive? Or just life? Just the normal process of growing up and making mistakes? Maybe it didn't matter whose fault it was. Maybe all that mattered was that he'd found his way back, that we'd found our way back to each other. My phone rang. Victor. Dad? You busy? Never too busy for you. I was thinking about the business. I know I've been distracted lately, with Clara and everything, but I want to get more involved, really involved, learn the parts I've been avoiding. I smiled. Like what? Like everything. The project management, the client relations, the financial planning. I want to understand what you built, how you built it. I don't want to just inherit something I don't understand. When do you want to start? Tomorrow? Tomorrow works. We hung up. I sat there for another moment, feeling something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Peace, not happiness exactly. The situation was still messy. Victor was still hurt. The family was still fractured. But we were moving in the right direction. Finally. The sunset finished. The city lights came on. I counted the buildings without meaning to. 217, the same as always. Some things changed. Some things stayed constant. You had to know which was which. Victor threw himself into learning the business. He showed up at 6 a.m. every morning, before the crews arrived. He studied the contracts, the blueprints, the building codes I'd memorized decades ago. He asked questions. Good questions. The kind that showed he was thinking, not just going through motions. Why do we always bid 10% under our actual cost estimate? He asked one morning. Because clients always negotiate down. If I bid our real number, we'd lose money on every job. But if I pad it, and they negotiate down, we end up exactly where we need to be. That seems dishonest. It's business. Everyone does it. The clients know we do it. They factor it into their budgets. It's a dance. You just have to learn the steps. He made notes in a leather journal he'd started carrying. Wrote down everything like his life depended on it. Maybe it did. Maybe this was his way of rebuilding himself. Finding solid ground after Clara had pulled the earth out from under him. We were at a job site one afternoon when he asked the question I'd been waiting for. Did you know, right from the start, that Clara was bad news? I considered lying, decided against it. I suspected. She was too perfect, too interested in our money, but I didn't know for sure until after the wedding. Why didn't you say something earlier? Would you have listened? He was quiet for a long moment. No, probably not. That's why. You had to see it yourself, had to feel the pain yourself. Otherwise, you'd have always wondered if I was just being overprotective. It still cost you. The violations, the legal fees, all of it. Money I can make back. You, I can't replace. Victor looked away, blinked hard a few times. I'm going to pay you back. Every dollar she cost you. You don't have to. I do. It's my fault she got close enough to hurt you. I brought her into the family. I'm responsible. I wanted to argue, but I understood. He needed this. Needed to feel like he was making amends. Okay, but no rush. We'll work out a payment plan. Thank you. We went back to work. The crew was pouring concrete for a foundation. Victor watched them, studying their technique, asking the foreman questions, learning, growing, becoming the man I'd always hoped he'd be. That night, Margaret called. I heard Victor's been working with you. Every day. How's he doing? Better than I expected. He's got a head for this. Just needed to focus. I'm glad. A pause. Tom, I've been thinking. About us. What about us? We made a good team during all this. With Clara. We worked together better than we did when we were married. We had a common enemy? Maybe, or maybe we just both grew up. I didn't know what to say to that. Margaret and I had been finished for years. The divorce had been amicable, but final. We'd wanted different things. She'd wanted stability and peace. I'd wanted growth and challenge. Those things didn't mix well in a marriage. I'm not suggesting we get back together, Margaret continued. I miss talking to you, like we used to, before everything got complicated. We can still talk. Can we? Without it being about Victor or business or problems? I don't know. Can we? She laughed softly. I guess we'll find out. There's a new art exhibit at the gallery downtown. I was thinking of going Saturday, if you wanted to join me. As friends? As whatever we are. I thought about it, about sitting in my apartment alone, about the silence that filled it most nights, about how strange it felt to have won against Clara but still feel empty. Okay, Saturday. Really? Really? What time? We made plans. Hung up. I sat there wondering if I was making a mistake. Wondering if you could ever really go back to someone after you'd left. Wondering if I even wanted to. But I'd learned something from the situation with Victor and Clara. Sometimes you don't know what you want until you lose it. Sometimes you have to break something completely before you can build it again properly. Maybe that's what Margaret and I needed. Not to rekindle what we had, but to build something new on the ruins of what we'd lost. Or maybe I was just getting old and sentimental. That was possible too. The art exhibit was pretentious garbage. Abstract paintings that looked like someone had sneezed paint onto canvas and called it emotion. Margaret loved every piece. She walked slowly from painting to painting, reading the little plaques that explained what the artist was trying to convey. I followed behind, hands in my pockets, trying not to look as bored as I felt. You hate this, she said after the third painting. I don't hate it. You're making your construction face, the one where you're calculating how long until you can leave. I couldn't help but smile. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who knows you. Come on, let's get coffee. We left the gallery and walked to a cafe 2 blocks away. It was one of those places with tiny tables and overpriced lattes. Margaret ordered something with caramel and whipped cream. I got black coffee. We sat by the window. Victor told me you're teaching him the business, Margaret said. He asked. I'm just showing him what I know. He respects you so much. He always has, even when Clara was in his ear. He has a funny way of showing respect. He was confused. She was good at making him doubt himself, doubt everyone around him. I know. I took a sip of coffee. Can I ask you something? Of course. When did you realize Clara was dangerous? Margaret thought about it. At the engagement party. She pulled me aside and told me how lucky Victor was to have her, how she was going to take care of him. But the way she said it felt wrong, like she was warning me to stay out of the way. Why didn't you say anything? For the same reason you didn't. Victor wouldn't have listened. He was in love, or thought he was. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, people walked past in heavy coats and scarves. October in Seattle meant rain and cold, but inside the cafe it was warm, safe. Do you regret it? Margaret asked suddenly. The divorce. Sometimes. Do you? Sometimes. She wrapped her hands around her cup. I regret that we couldn't figure out how to stay together, but I don't regret who we became apart. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. I'm proud of you, Tom, for how you handled Clara, for how you protected Victor. You're a good father. I'm a father who let his son marry a con artist. You're a father who saved his son from one. There's a difference. I wanted to believe that, wanted to believe I'd done the right thing. But part of me still wondered if I'd handled it wrong, if there was a better way, a cleaner way, One that didn't involve private investigators and blackmail and $40,000 in hush money. She's going to do this again, I said. In Miami or wherever she ends up. She's going to find another Victor, another family, and she's going to hurt them. That's not your responsibility, isn't it? I have proof of what she's done. I could report her, make sure she faces consequences. You could, but you won't. Why not? Margaret reached across the table, touched my hand. Because you're not a vindictive person, Tom. You protected your son. That was your goal. What Clara does next isn't your problem. She was right. I knew she was right. But it still bothered me. The idea that Clara would just move on, find new victims, keep destroying lives. There had to be justice somewhere, some kind of cosmic balance. But maybe that was naive. Maybe the world didn't work that way. Maybe sometimes bad people got away with bad things, and you just had to accept it and move on. Tell me about the business, Margaret said, changing the subject. Is Victor really learning, or is he just showing up? He's learning. He's got talent for it. Better instincts than I expected. Are you going to make him partner? Eventually, when he's ready. There's still a lot he doesn't know. But you see potential? I see my son. Finally. Margaret smiled. Good, that's good. We finished our coffee, walked back toward the parking garage. The rain had started, light and cold. Margaret didn't have an umbrella. I shared mine. We walked close together, shoulders almost touching. At her car, she turned to face me. We should do this again. The art exhibit was terrible, but the company was nice. The company was okay, I said. She laughed and hit my arm lightly. Still a charmer, I see. I never was. No, you never were. But I liked you anyway. She got in her car, drove away. I stood there in the rain for a moment, umbrella over my head, watching her taillights disappear into traffic. Something had shifted. Something small but significant. I couldn't name it yet. Didn't need to. Time would tell what it meant. I drove home, sat in my apartment, looked out at the city. The buildings were lit up. 217. Always 217. My phone buzzed. Text from Victor. Finished reviewing the Morrison Street project files. Found some issues with the permits. Can we talk tomorrow? I texted back. Come by the office at 7. We'll go through it. Thanks, Dad. 2 words. But they meant everything. 3 months passed. Victor became my shadow at work. He learned fast, made connections, built relationships with clients. The crews respected him because he wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. He'd show up in jeans and work boots, help carry materials, ask questions about technique. He was earning his place instead of assuming he deserved it. The business grew. We landed 2 major contracts, a downtown office building and a residential complex in the suburbs. Victor handled the residential project almost entirely on his own. I supervised, but didn't interfere. He needed to succeed or fail based on his own decisions. He succeeded. The project came in under budget and ahead of schedule. The clients were happy, the crew was happy, Victor was happy. I never understood what you did, he told me one night. We were at the office late, going over bids for a new project. I thought construction was just building things, but it's so much more. It's logistics and psychology and diplomacy. It's controlled chaos, I said. You're managing materials and people and budgets and timelines all at once. One thing goes wrong, everything else falls apart, so you plan for things to go wrong. That's dark. That's realistic. He made notes in his journal. He'd filled 3 of them already. I'd never seen someone so dedicated to learning. It reminded me of myself at his age, hungry, determined, willing to work harder than anyone else, because that was the only advantage I had. Dad, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Are you and Mom getting back together? I looked up from the spreadsheet I'd been studying. Why do you ask? She mentioned you've been spending time together, going to museums, having dinner. I just wondered. We're figuring things out. I don't know what it means yet. But you want it to mean something? Did I? I'd been asking myself the same question. Margaret and I were older now, different people than we'd been during our marriage. Maybe that was good. Maybe we could build something better this time. Maybe, I admitted. What do you think about that? Victor shrugged. I think you deserve to be happy, both of you. If that's together or apart, I support it. That's very mature of you. I learned from the best. I threw a pen at him. He caught it, grinning. These moments, these simple exchanges, they were worth everything I'd gone through with Clara, worth the stress, the money, the pain, because I had my son back, the real Victor, not the one Clara had tried to mold. My phone rang. Eddie. Tom, we need to talk. What's wrong? Clara's back in Seattle. I felt my chest tighten. When? Flew in 3 days ago. I've had a contact at the airport watching for her name. She's staying at a hotel downtown, the expensive one on 5th. Why is she back? That's what worries me. She violated the NDA by even setting foot in the city. My guess is she's planning something. Do we know what? Not yet, but I'll find out. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I hung up. Victor was watching me with concern. What happened? Clara's back. His face went pale. Why? I don't know, but we're going to find out. Eddie tailed Clara for 2 days. She visited 3 locations, a law office, a bank, and Victor's old house. The house had been sold to a young couple with 2 kids. Clara stood outside for 20 minutes, just staring at it. Eddie said she looked angry. She's planning something, Eddie confirmed. But I can't figure out what. The law office she visited specializes in contract disputes. The bank meeting was with a loan officer. None of it makes obvious sense. Keep watching her. How long? Until we know what she wants. On the 3rd day, Clara made her move. She showed up at my office, just walked through the front door like she had every right to be there. My secretary tried to stop her, but Clara pushed past, striding into my office like she owned it. We need to talk, she said. I was on a call with a supplier, held up one finger, finished the conversation, hung up, looked at her calmly. You're violating the NDA. Sue me. I will. She sat down without being invited. She looked different, thinner, harder. Miami hadn't been kind to her, or maybe life hadn't been kind to her. Hard to say. I want to renegotiate, she said. Renegotiate what? The settlement. 40,000 wasn't enough. I want more. I leaned back in my chair. The settlement was final. You signed papers. Under duress. You threatened me, coerced me. A good lawyer could argue the entire agreement is invalid. You had your own lawyer present. A bad one. I didn't understand what I was signing. This was interesting. Clara was desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. What happened in Miami? None of your business. I'm making it my business. You violated the NDA. That means our agreement is void, which means I can hand everything I have on you to the district attorney. So either tell me what you want, or get out of my office and wait for the cops. She glared at me. For a moment, I thought she might actually leave. Then she slumped in the chair, some of the fight going out of her. I lost the money. All 40,000? Most of it. I made some bad investments, got involved with the wrong people. It's gone. And now you're broke. Now I'm broke. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the slap, the fake violations, the way she'd manipulated Victor. The sympathy evaporated. That's not my problem. I could make it your problem. I could go to the press. Tell them how you paid me off, how you used a private investigator to harass me, how you destroyed my marriage because you couldn't accept that Victor had grown up. You could try, but it wouldn't work. Why not? Because I have documentation of everything you did, the fraud, the theft, the schemes. Any reporter who looked into your story would find the truth. You'd just be humiliating yourself. Clara stood up, started pacing. There has to be something. Some way we can work this out. There isn't. Please. Her voice cracked. I'm desperate. I have nothing. No money, no job, no prospects. I came back here because it was the only place I could think to go. You should have thought about that before you stole from the Rutherfords, before you tried to destroy my business, before you hurt my son. I loved him. No, you didn't. You loved what he represented. Money, security, status. But you never loved Victor. She stopped pacing, looked at me with something like hatred. You don't know anything about what I felt. I know you're a con artist. I know you've been running scams since you were old enough to lie convincingly. I know you're going to keep doing it until someone stops you or you end up in prison. So that's it? You're just going to let me starve? I'm going to let you face the consequences of your choices. That's different. She stood there for another moment. Then she turned and walked out, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat there, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no regret. Just tired. Eddie called 5 minutes later. She left the building, heading back toward her hotel. Stay on her. You think she's done? No. I think she's just getting started. Clara disappeared for a week. Eddie lost track of her after the hotel. She'd checked out, paid cash, left no forwarding information. It was like she'd vanished. That worried me more than her being visible. At least when I could see her, I knew what she was doing. Victor noticed my tension. You're worried about Clara. She's unpredictable. That makes her dangerous. What can she do? The NDA? The NDA only matters if she cares about legal consequences. Right now, she's desperate. Desperate people don't think rationally. We were at a job site, watching a crane lift steel beams into place. The work was hypnotic. Up, over, down, up, over, down. Precise and controlled. Everything construction should be but rarely was. Do you think she'll come after me? Victor asked. I think she'll come after whoever she thinks can give her what she wants. That could be me, could be you, could be someone else entirely. Should I be scared? You should be careful. Don't meet with her alone. Don't engage if she contacts you. Just let me know immediately. Victor nodded, but I could see he was shaken. Clara still had power over him. Not love, but fear. Fear of what she might do. Fear of what she might say. That kind of fear could be just as damaging as the original manipulation. She can't hurt you anymore, I said. Not unless you let her. I know. It's just hard to believe sometimes. She was so good at getting into my head. That's what she does. But you're stronger now. You know her tricks. Am I? Strong enough? You fought your way back from rock bottom. You rebuilt your life. Yeah, you're strong enough. The crane lifted another beam. Up, over, down. The crew secured it with bolts that would hold tons of weight. Building something meant creating strength from individual pieces. Each beam mattered. Each connection mattered. Remove one and the whole thing could collapse. That's what Clara had tried to do. Remove the connections. Isolate Victor. Make him dependent only on her. But she'd failed. The connections had held. Barely, but they'd held. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Tom Brennan? Who's asking? My name is Detective Sarah Park, Seattle PD. I need to ask you some questions about Clara Whitmore. My stomach dropped. What about her? She filed a police report this afternoon. Claims you've been harassing her, stalking her. She has a lawyer who's threatening to file a restraining order. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because she has evidence. Photos of a man following her. A PI license registered to someone named Edward Marsh. And bank records showing you paid him over $20,000 in the past 4 months. Eddie. Clara had made him somehow, or followed him, or just gotten lucky. Didn't matter. She'd found a crack in our armor and she was exploiting it. I hired a PI to investigate her after she tried to sabotage my business. Everything I did was legal. She claims you're doing it out of revenge, that you're trying to intimidate her. Detective, Clara is a con artist. She has a history of fraud. She married my son, tried to steal from my family, and I have documentation of everything. Then I'll need to see that documentation. Can you come to the station tomorrow? Do I need a lawyer? That's up to you. But we're taking her allegations seriously. Stalking is a serious crime. I hung up and immediately called Phil. He answered on the third ring, sounding annoyed. This better be good. Clara filed a police report, claims I'm stalking her. A pause. That's bold. Is it true? Technically. Maybe. Following someone with a PI could be considered harassment if she felt threatened. But with her history, it's a weak case. So what do? You go in tomorrow with me. We present all the evidence of what she did. We show that you had legitimate reasons to investigate her. We make this go away before it becomes a problem. And if they don't buy it, then we fight. But it won't come to that. Clara's trying to scare you, get you to settle again. Don't fall for it. I didn't sleep that night. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. Best case, the police realized Clara was playing games and dropped it. Worst case, I ended up with a restraining order, legal fees, and a damaged reputation. Neither option was good. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. Eddie. Don't go to that police meeting, he said without preamble. Why not? Because I just found out Clara's working with someone, a lawyer named Mitchell Price. He specializes in frivolous lawsuits, files dozens of them, settles for nuisance amounts. He's running a scam, and Clara's the face of it. How'd you find this out? Price has a history. 5 complaints with the Bar Association, 2 ongoing investigations. He's dirty, and if you walk into that police station, you're playing into their hands. They want you on record, want you to say something they can twist. So what do? You let Phil handle it. You stay away, and you let me gather more evidence on Price. Once we have enough, we turn the tables. This is never going to end, is it? It'll end when Clara runs out of moves, or when someone finally puts her in prison, whichever comes first. I hung up and called Phil, explained what Eddie had said. Phil agreed to go to the police meeting alone, present the evidence, make the case. I stayed home, paced my apartment, watched the sun come up over those 217 buildings. By noon, Phil called back. They're dropping it. Clara's story fell apart under scrutiny. The detective saw through it pretty quickly once I showed them her history. That's it? That's it. But Tom, you need to be careful. Clara's escalating. This won't be her last move. He was right, and I was tired of playing defense. Time to go on offense.